Good evening, everyone. My name is Ilabapa Ibrahim, and I am going to be your moderator for today's session. I am the social media manager for Pen Promise Ventures Limited. And today with me, I have an expert in person of Uchechi, and she would be taking us through the next level product development factors. And she would go into and discuss the details and intricate details of product development for startups and founders. So basically, if you have any question, you feel free to drop it in the comment section. Of course, she's eventually going to look after that. And don't forget, this is supposed to be an interactive session. So feel free to put up your hands, raise your hands up if you have any question or you want to give an input. And of course, we're definitely going to invite you to the stage. Also, the session is going to be recorded. As a matter of fact, it is, and we are going to upload the final product on YouTube. So I feel the need to let you know that just in case if you are on stage and you're probably going about your presentation, feel free to take a pause after every sentence. And of course, if you ever make a mistake anywhere along the way, feel free to just come back from the start, because we're eventually going to chop out some of those parts in post-processing, so that people who are going to watch this video on YouTube in the future will be able to get a seamless session where all those little discrepancies are out of the way. So thank you very much for joining. I could see we have quite a number of people in attendance, so we'll just proceed. So before I proceed, I would like to call on the guest speaker for today. That's Uchechi Uzoemena, who would be taking us through next level product development factors. And she is basically an expert, an engineer, and of course a product developer. So I would like her to come on board and introduce herself before we proceed. Uchechi, please, the floor is yours. Kindly introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, Ila. Good evening, everyone. Hope our day went fine. So my name is Uchechi Uzoemena. I'm actually a product manager, and I have this is my third year in product management. So I have some experience following through the life cycle of a product, from the ideation stage down to development, down to launch, and then post-launch activities. And yeah, it's actually something I really love to do. And I really hope that at the end of this session, I'll be able to share some important insights with you based on my experience with product management in the past 3 years. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Like I said earlier on, my name is Ilabapa Ibrahim, and I'm a social media manager for Pen Promise Ventures Limited. For those of you who don't know Pen Promise Ventures, we are a growth funding and venture building platform that exists to drive transformative growth in middle market economies across Africa. So we basically ideate, validate, and co-create, build new businesses, and help scale up existing early stage startups. So our team has developed a well-equipped hub and blueprint for innovators and entrepreneurs like yourself to build, mentor, and share their stories for common uplift. That is why, whether it's refining your business structure, putting together a business development plan, or providing you, whether it is refining your business structure, putting together a business development plan, or providing you mentorship for taking your business to a new height, we're here for you. Just like we have Uchechi on this session and the session itself to probably put you in the right place where you'll be able to make informed decision when it comes to developing your own product. So the floor is yours, Uchechi. Jolu, do you have any inputs before Uchechi goes on?
Okay, so thank you, Ila, for that introduction. It's going to be more or less like a mini panel session. I'll be asking Uchechi some of the questions that I feel that founders would like to know, especially when it comes to product development. And then along the way, if anyone has questions, you can raise up your hands, you can type in the chat box, whatever question you have, And also at the end of the session, there will be a question and answer moment for people to ask further questions. We want it to be as interactive as possible. And as you know from the flyer, the topic for today is next level product development tactics. And the reason, because I always like to give a rationale behind everything that we do. The reason why we chose this topic was because from our venture studio, so our venture studio is we provide hands-on growth. We help you to build your products. Just as she mentioned that when she was introducing herself, I was like, she fits, or like she checks all the boxes, from ideation to product building to product launch. And that is what we. So last year we had idea factory, idea validation stage. We focused more on validating ideas. And this year we are focusing more on the product building parts. Applications are currently open. You can check our website and our social media pages later on. So that was what warranted us to like talk about this and look for an expert who would be able to speak more to questions that founders might want to know concerning product development and the tactics. And I'm glad we have Uchechi here with us. Welcome again, Uchechi, and thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you very much for having me.
So yeah, I'll just go right to the point. So I know for most founders, they usually think about what will it take for them to like build your product, right? From concepts in which you refer to as ideation stage. So what will you consider as the critical factors that founders need to consider, from the ideation stage to up to the product development or product building stage? What are the critical factors you think they should consider?
Okay, so there are a lot of factors to consider actually from the ideation to launch. But I think the most critical ones is firstly, so during the ideation stage, you have to do a lot of market research and analysis. And this is actually going to answer a lot of questions for the founders. So when they do their market research and analyze the market, it helps them to know who their target audience is. So during the ideation stage, during ideation stage is when they're probably iterating on what products to build and why you should build it. So it's very important to know who you're building this product for. That's how you actually get to know your target audience. And then it's also very important to know your competitors. The product you're building, is it a new idea in the market, or is it something that you already have other companies or other people doing? So you have to also do a competitive analysis of those that are already doing this idea in the market. How are they doing theirs? What are the things you can learn from theirs to be able to leverage on your own? And then you need to know if there's a demand for this product that you're building in the market, so you don't end up wasting resources. All this is actually going to answer a lot of questions. And then after you've gotten all those feedback, and then you've iterated on that to probably build on the features based on the feedback you get from your survey on the market and the target audience, then you go ahead to design and develop. That's another important factor during the product development process. And that actually involves a lot of things. During design and development stage, there is a lot. So the designer will probably have to prototype, to put into maybe a sketch what exactly you want to build, to see how this is going to look like. And during that development stage, it's more like requirements gathering to know, okay, now that you've determined what you're building and then who you're building it for, then you just bring out the requirement as to how exactly you're going to build it, what resources are needed. That's what's important during the design and development stages, for that to gather that too. Another thing to think of too is resource management. So when you've gotten all this down, then how much, like, you have to know what is the budget for this project, how much do we have at the moment, and then how much time is it going to take, and how much what the amount of personnel or the number of personnel available for hands-on building of this project. These are things to consider too. Then another thing to consider is when all this has been considered, then the product is being built, right? Then you have to think of a go-to-market strategy. More like, now that I've built my product, how do I market it out there for people to actually know that, okay, there's something that is being built that will solve problems for them. So of course, there should be a marketing plan. And then you should also know, how do you plan to distribute this to your target audience based on the research that has already been done? And how do you plan to sell to them? Because if you're building a product, you're hoping to make money from it. It should actually be profitable. And when this has been done and then you've launched your product, another thing to also consider is it's very important as founders to make room for customer feedback. And customer feedback is when your product has been launched. When you're launching for the first time, it's most likely an MVP that you're launching out. It's not a perfect product. So you should actually give room for customer feedback. That's when a lot of customers or users will tell you what they like about your product, what they really don't like, what they would like you to change. And this is mostly based on the fact that, especially if they are already competitors out there in the market, so you can actually leverage on this feedback and insight to continuously improve on your product and keep testing from time to time to ensure that your product is actually up to standard, so that you don't actually lose the customers that you've gotten on that product. And yeah, I think those are the most critical factors to consider during and when building a product from the ideation stage down to the launch.
Thank you so much for that insight. And that's one thing we always see with founders. People don't realize that they also have to get feedback from whoever they're building their products for. You can't just sit down and just decide this is a solution that we're building without trying to. You have to validate your idea first. You have to understand that there is actually a problem that needs to be solved, and your solution is actually what people need. So yeah, thank you so much for that insight. Okay, so I wanted to also ask, because we're in an era of AI tools and everything that makes things easier for us. So what tools or software do you think founders need, especially at the products building stage?
Okay, so it depends on what exactly those tools will be needed for. So during this whole process of product development, there's a whole lot involved in it. So that's why, I broke it down into different stages. So there's ideation, there's requirement gathering, there's also the stage of the building, that's the actual development itself. And then there is pre-launch activities, there's launch activities, there's post-launch. So for all these different stages, there are different tools or different requirements based on what is needed per time and based on what is needed by the personnel that will be involved in each of the stages. So when you say tools, so when it comes to AI, AI can actually help in all the stages, because doing research, so sometimes that the internet is actually very important here, and the internet is our best friend. That's what I see it as anyways. And so when you're doing your research work, AI helps you in the sense that you can actually just cut down, before the traditional method of doing research work is probably to start going to those companies, start asking them questions. You see people sharing flyers on the road and all that. But AI and also the internet has helped us like probably bridge the gap. So now the information you need about a particular company is available to you at the blink of an eye. All you need to do is just search the internet, or if you even need more information, maybe prompt some AIs, and you get to see some important information about most of these competitors that you're probably going to be researching on. And then through the journey of the product development. So while you're developing your products, just in case you come across any issues, thank God now we have AI, right? AI now solves a lot of problems for us. You can ask AI an issue, ask AI a question probably when you're coding or when you're documenting your requirements, and then there's maybe you come across some places you don't understand. AI can actually help with that. And another thing again, there's even I forgot to mention low code tools, low code platforms, low code softwares has actually helped a lot. Personally, I know few people that have actually built some products out there in the market. They built it with some low code tools, and you won't even know. So that one is also a way to actually cut time, cut the money you're going to spend on personnel, also cut through the long process of product building. So low code tools actually help with that too. So these are some important tools that founders need to be aware of, that when they want to build products, you can probably leverage AI for different, you can use AI for a lot of things based on, but what's important is you have to recognize that there are different aspects during this product development process. So depends on the stage of the product development process that you're currently in. You will know the best tool that would help you in that particular stage. So AI is there. We have local tools. Then we have mostly when it's a product that is already in the market, especially for products that are probably in the fintech space or in the e-commerce space. So when it comes to payments, we also have some we already have the advancements of payment, like blockchain technologies now has helped us a lot. And so many products or so many founders are leveraging on that as one of the means of payments. So there's actually just a lot of tools out there. It just depends on what exactly you are using it for and how you're going to use it to build your products.
Thank you for that. You mentioned the tools that and how it is relevant, right, to use. So can you mention or can you just give like examples of some of the tools you've worked with that possibly helped you? I know it's not just theory for you, it's not theoretical. You are in you are involved in the practical aspect of it. So what tools, some of these tools have you used and for what aspect it could serve as an encouragement or a sort of an insight to some of the founders on the call?
Okay. So personally, because I do a lot of research work, I do a lot of the documentation, I do a lot of analysis. So I use a lot of AI tools. Actually, we have the very popular one that everybody knows. Everybody knows ChatGPT now. We also have Gemini. There are so many other AI tools that you can prompt. So how these ones have helped me personally is it has helped me to reduce the time I've actually spent on research, like I mentioned. So most times I might have to just come up with an analysis of probably competitors or of the market. It can actually be like maybe I'm building a product that's in a new industry, in an industry that I don't actually have an idea about. Instead of going to the maybe let me give a practical example. For instance, I'm building an e-commerce product. Instead of opening the Jumia app or opening the GG app to probably start looking at the features to know what exactly I need to study, I can just prompt the AI for all these things, and this thing saves me a lot of time and help me to document those important things I need to get from those particular products. Another tool that I also use. So there was a particular time that I worked on a project, and so we didn't have a lot of personnel at hand, and it was a problem for us. So we leveraged on using these low code tools to build a product. It will surprise you that you can build a product from scratch. So now I don't develop, like I'm not a developer. I don't really know anything much about coding. But then it surprise you that so for founders that actually want to build products like that, well, not for all products, of course, but most times you can leverage on these low code or no code tools rather to build a product from scratch easily, and you don't even really need to know how to code. So you saw an example of these low code tools. I know I have some experience using Flutter Flow, so you can check that online. So that's one tool that has also helped me to cut through time to just build a quick MVP for a particular project that I was a part of. And yeah, so those two are the ones I can actually give insights on because I've used them personally and they've helped me to cut out a lot of time than the normal traditional method of doing these things.
Thank you so much for that insight because I think founders now, everybody just wants to be tech bro and the rest. And I like the fact that you mentioned the no code tools too that could also be used. Not all products actually need to start with the old coding and apps initially. Then it depends on what you're building and basically the MVP you're working on. So thank you so much for that. Let's talk about prototyping, right? I know that it's also one of the processes in developing or building a product. So, what do you look out for when prototyping, and what would you tell founders? What are the tips that probably worked for you? Because I want it to be as practical as possible, you know, prototyping and everything that has to do with it.
Okay, so when it comes to prototyping, it's very important that founders are aware of like the most important factors. Um, so you're building a product here, and then what I understand from prototyping is probably you want to have maybe an MVP. So prototyping helps for you to probably have a view on maybe should I say a short-term view of what your product would look like before you actually maybe go into the deep development process and then launching and all that. So when it comes to prototype, the first thing I think founders should actually look out for is, yes, that's why I mentioned the low code tool initially. So it depends on how long the project is going to be for, or it depends on how fast you need to get a product out there in the market. The first thing to look out for is the time that you need to actually release that product or to release that MVP into the market. Once you've actually determined, okay, we need to get this out there probably in, well, it's not reasonable to say 1 month, but just for example's sake, let's say a month. So the first thing to do is, okay, what exactly are we building? And when all the requirements have been probably outlined properly, and then you've already had your personnel at hand, depends on what kind of product you're building and what industry the product falls under. So the first thing to do is know the personnel that is going to be involved in this product building process, and they know what exactly you're building. Then when you know what exactly you're building and the time needed to release this product out there into the market, or the time needed for you to get this MVP out there, it could be for whatever reason maybe you have some investors you want to show this prototype to, or maybe because you just want to, and for whatever reason it is. So the first thing to look out for is the time you need to release this prototype, then the personnel you have at hand. When you look at these two things, and the next thing is, okay, are you going to go through the traditional method of building this product, the normal way, maybe coding, developing the product from scratch, or are you going to make use of low-code tools? So these are the first questions that founders will need to answer first. So when all these have been determined, then it would help them to know what exactly is the tool that will be needed to prototype their product. And of course, we understand that prototypes are not final products. Prototypes are more like I keep using the word MVP, although prototype is different from an MVP. Yeah, prototype is like a low sketch of what an MVP should look like. So yeah, these are the most critical factors that founders have to, and they are more like factors, and they are also more like questions that founders need to answer first. They need to help them know what exactly they need to do in terms of prototyping their products.
Thank you so much. As a follow-up question to that, because I know you've interacted with startup founders and all that, what would you say are the common pitfalls or mistakes that founders make at the product development stage? Maybe from the idea, because stages, the ideation, the idea validation stage. So what are the pitfalls, the mistakes that you've seen founders make, and what would you advise? Like, how should they avoid those kind of mistakes?
Okay, so there are a lot of pitfalls actually. Firstly, one major pitfall that founders need to avoid is lack of market research. So, a lot of founders just stumble upon an idea, and yes, they just realize, they just think of it that, oh, you know what, we need to build a product, we need to release this product into the market, and you've not even done a lot of research to know, who are you even building this product for? Is this actually something that we need to build? And then a lot of founders waste a lot of time, resources, personnel. Of course, most of this personnel, you pay them to build the product, right? And at the end of it all, the product will just crash even before it has a chance to probably fly in the market. So lack of market research. So the best way to avoid this is to actually conduct a lot of market research to understand, firstly, the people you are building this product for. It's very important to know who you are building the product for. When you know who you're building for, you know why they need the product. What problem would that product solve for them? And then if you identify the problem it's going to solve for them, you know how best to build the product. So it already answers a lot of questions. So that's the first thing. And then most times, founders just actually, like I said, they stumble upon an idea. And the next thing is, we need this product out there in the market. How is this going to be built? Like, there's a lot of process that is involved from the ideation stage to the launch stage. It's not really, it's not as easy as it sounds. So poor planning, that's the next one. So founders just have an idea of what they want, but probably during the middle or in the midst of when it's time to actually build the product, they get to understand that, oh, they didn't plan this properly. There was no proper roadmap. There was no proper structure of how we're going to build this and how it's going to be launched into the market. So it's very, very important to develop clear roadmaps. Like, so this is the first quarter. By the end of this quarter, what should we have done? By the end of Q2, what should we have done? And then there should be proper timelines for all of this. Then this is the perfect way to actually avoid that pitfall. Another one again, and that's why I mentioned that previously, ignoring feedback. They will always say you cannot make all your users happy. But then if you're building a product for the customers, you should at least listen to a majority of them on the feedback they give about your product. So it's very important that when you build a product, then you should create room to receive or to get feedback from your customers, whether it's going to be in-app forms, whether it's going to be telling them to rate the product or sending them mails. It's very, very important to gather insights from these people that you're building this product for, so that they don't just, wake up one morning and then another product is out there, it has more USPs than yours, and then they drop your own product for another one, and then you are now wondering why there's a lot of churn rates. So how this can be avoided is founders should, like I mentioned, continuously gather and implement user feedback. There are many main ways to actually do that based on the product that is being built, whether it's an app, whether it's a website, it all depends. Another one again is, and this is actually a very critical one, overcomplicating the product. So yeah, you've already done your research and you know what the users already need, right? During the product development process, you now decide to add some nice things to it. You don't want to just release a product that is going to focus on one thing. You want to add some nice to haves. And while this is actually a good thing, the downside of it is, so when you overcomplicate a product, users might most times be confused. We thought this is what this product is supposed to do. Why are we having all these extra things? And then you will now find out that, so from the back side of things, when you're doing your analytics, you'll find out that there are some features that users don't even interact with in your product. So just like, for example, this is just for example's sake though. So imagine building a product and then they are all, okay, you know what, let me not talk about any particular product, but then users come, probably they just, for example, you build an app and then users are using your app for the particular reason they need it for. So there are some other nice to haves there. It's not true that you won't have some other users that will just go through it to maybe because of curiosity, know what exactly those features are doing. But everybody is just going to be focused on the main reason why that app is there. So it's very important to sometimes build a very simple, straightforward product so that you don't overcomplicate things. And then lastly, inadequate testing. I know everyone here would not like to use a product that there's always bugs. Every time you want to do something, there's always bugs. Either something is not functioning properly, or either you cannot even log in, or you're not receiving OTP. So one way a user can, the founders can actually like avoid this pitfall is to ensure that for every time the product is being released into the market, it should have gone through rigorous testing to ensure that the quality is in check, so that you don't just end up building something at the end of the day, users are rating your product bad. Your product has not had a lot of time in the market, and then already people are already tired of using the product because there are a lot of bugs. So if founders can leverage on these 5 things I've mentioned, for these are not all, but these are the most important ones I think founders can leverage on. Yes, then it can actually help them in the phase of product development.
Thank you so much for those gems. I think they are actually fundamental. They are the basis for the success of any product. Identify a problem. We cannot overemphasize that. You don't just build. I know you want to build the next best thing, but first identify a problem, and then that you can now build the solution to that problem. And then, just as she said, a roadmap. You might have the best idea, but if you don't have a proper strategy that you follow, you will definitely not accomplish it. And then she also mentioned feedback, right? Testing, all that. You cannot overemphasize that. So I'm sure founders, you guys are taking notes, and these are gems that you're getting for free, and I'm sure they will help you a lot. So moving on, I know everybody, like founders, everybody, they have this great ideas in their mind. They want to like build the next Amazon, the next, Flutter Wave and all that. Well, some will be like, I don't have enough resources yet to build the thing. What would you advise, for people or for founders in those kind of situations? What are some of the cost-effective strategies that small startups can use to enhance their product development or product building?
Okay. So firstly, for small startups that probably are trying to, maybe most of their constraints is going to be on funds or exposure or whatever constraint that they might have. So that's why I would advise for small startup, depends on what they are building here. So if it's a product that is just simple and straightforward, most times I just advise founders to just go for low-code tools, like this low-cost or low-code software. You can actually just build a product from scratch and then release your MVP. And probably when you start getting users, and then probably you can start asking for funding, then you can actually go ahead and then maybe build it the way you would like to be, like building it from scratch. But that's one thing to actually, so leveraging on open source tools is one thing I can advise founders to do. Then another thing again is, so for founders that don't really want to go through that route, that want to go through the traditional method of building products from scratch, maybe based on the features that it's going to have, then they can outsource. Probably you don't actually have to hire people full time. So you can hire some freelancers. There are always lots of freelancers looking for the next project to just work on for a short while, and then they are over to the next project. So most times founders can leverage on these freelancers to just build your product, and then with time you can now build your own product team or project team, because most times I know that when it comes to saving costs, so founders are very like, this is one thing that founders will most likely want to avoid. Another thing again is, so I'm sure most of us here have already heard of agile methodologies. So agile is a mindset, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of building and all. So it's very important for founders to embrace the agile mindset, knowing fully well that there is no one way of doing things. So, and this is going to actually be based on research work, this is most likely after you have done your research and you've come up with maybe the terminologies, or probably, no, let me put it this way, you've come up with the strategies you want to use to build your product, or you've come up with the requirements. So the next thing to do is, don't just stick to one way of doing things. That's why I mentioned the low code at first, because some founders will tell you, if I'm not getting a product, if I'm not getting a development team, I'm building from scratch, then I can't do that. So there's no one way to actually build your MVP. So it's very important to keep an open mind, and also keeping an open mind, not just about the product development, but also about ideas. Because during the ideation stage, when you're trying to even build something, you might you might probably discover that the way you actually wanted to build that product, at the end of the day, it's not even, or in the long run, you don't even need to wait till when the product has been built. In the long run, you discover that, oh, there'll be a better way, or maybe you might find out based on research or based on what's happening in the market, based on current trends, that there's something else you can do. But there are some founders, they have their mind set on something and they need to make sure that that's how it's going to be done. So it's very important to keep an open mind. Another thing is make sure you're collaborating and networking with people. So you might be doing the product building stage, and then you network with a lot of people and you share your ideas with them. And from the beginning, from the inception stage, you're already getting investors, you're already getting people that want to collaborate with you. So founders should also leverage on making sure that, for example, most of these tech events we have in Nigeria, because I think most of us are in Nigeria or in Lagos. So it's also a good place for founders to go to sell your products. Most times you don't need to have a finished product or an MVP before you actually seek for funding. Just maybe put together a very nice slide, have some nice designs done by maybe a product or UI UX designer, and then partner with other startups, and then probably share your product idea. Of course, not the whole product idea, so someone doesn't copy your idea, but probably give them an insight as to what you are building and keep people on their toes. It's also very important. And then lastly, after you've done all these things, then you should also focus on building an MVP that is worth the wait. So imagine you've already you've already probably gotten a team, you've paid freelancers, you've already developed like the agile methodology, agile mindset, and then you've already gone out to tech events, you've collaborated with people, you've done a lot of networking. At the end of the day, you then release your MVP and it's not worth it. So it's very important that while you are doing all these things, to ensure that while you are marketing the product out there, you are ensuring that the product quality is not taken lightly. So ensure that you are building and also while you're building the MVP, that's why I mentioned testing, very important. So if you test your MVP and then you're sure that this is a very cool idea based on your research work that you've done, ensure that you're building something that is worth the while, so that when you're marketing things, or when you're showing your slide or your MVP to founders, it's something that will keep them interested. So these are the most important cost-effective strategies for founders or small startups to take note of, that will help them enhance their product development capabilities.
Thank you so much for that. And I think we should emphasize on the partnership too, because I understand that ideas are like our babies, right? We want to just nurture them and all that, but then we'll get to a point where the baby obviously is beyond just us. You might need help. You might need like insights from another person and all that. So networking and partnering with other people to to share ideas. Obviously, not all your ideas, but that is also very important for startups. And you also mentioned the essence of feedback, customer feedback, surveys and all that. Um, how do you, from the practical part of it now, how do you analyze this data or feedback that you get? For instance, now, if I was a founder and I was building something and then went to the market to try to test to see if it was working and all that, and it's not what the market needs, do I scrap everything altogether and start afresh? Have you been in that kind of situation? How did you handle it? I want practical tips that can help our founders.
Okay, so I'm going to speak from experience. Okay, so firstly, it can be very painful, it can be very disappointing that after all the time, the resources and all spent in building a product, and then maybe once you're about to launch, or when you launch, you now realize that, this is not even what the users need in the first place. So it could come off as, does that mean that I got my market analysis or that I got my research phase wrong? So now it depends. The answer is yes and no. So it depends on what's currently happening. So you can actually leverage on so many things. You can go back to, product building process is not a finished process. So even when a product is out there in the market, you will notice that these your favorite apps out there, they are always updating. And you'll notice that they've taken up one feature that is no longer in use, and they've added a new feature that probably based on the current happenings in the market, or based on the user trend or customer trend. So that's going to give you that actually gives a lot of insight into telling you that when you build something and you find out that, oh, what you build is not what the users need, sometimes it depends on what you built in the first place. So if what you built actually, and depends on the industry, it's very important to know that it also depends on the industry. So it's just to go back to doing research work. So most times you see some companies will tell you, oh, we are discontinuing this for a while and we'll be back. There's no harm in doing that. That's why I said it's very important to embrace the agile mindset, that there's no one way of doing things. There are some founders that probably most of these products we currently use, most of them, we might not even know the history. This product might have come out, maybe they might have released it from the first instance, and maybe there was no, the product was not doing well in the market, and people were not even understanding the product. So they didn't even have users. And then it's okay to pause on maybe pause the development process and go back to work, go back to research, go back to talk to customers and ask them what they really want, and come back and iterate on the product and relaunch again. So the most important thing is not about whether you're going to pause or not. The most important thing is, are you building what the users need per time? So if you answer the question and the answer is no, automatically means you have to go back to work. But if the answer is yes, maybe you didn't just get, so maybe you got what the users need, but you just didn't get, you didn't put it out the way they would need it. You understand? It's one thing to identify the problem. It's another thing to identify how to solve the problem. So those are two things. That's why I said the answer is yes and no. So if you actually do this, probably do this research and you find out that yes, you got the idea right, just probably you didn't build the product well. You know that it's not about the idea, it's about the process, about the development process. And you can always go back, make your research again, and come back into the market. But now it's different if you got the idea wrong, like what you're building is not what is even needed. For example, now someone coming to sell me DVD or all these CDs when I actually have internet, most of that. I have Netflix, I have YouTube. So you understand that you have to understand what exactly users need at that particular time. And it's very important to leverage on current happenings. So there are a lot of trends. And then if you answer this question and you see that no, you didn't build it right, so you can now ask yourself, so what can I do? Or what can I do? How can I iterate on this product based on the current happening in the market to make sure that as I'm coming back, as I'm relaunching this product, I'm going to launch something that users will probably want to use maybe the second time. So who knows, maybe the second time might actually be it might be the time that it's going to work. So that's the thing. Customer feedback is important. I've been leveraging on that since. It's very important to get customer feedback. And then you can make an informed decision based on your customer, on the feedback that you get, whether you're going to go back to work and then restart the process, the building process from scratch, or probably just change some things and then come back and launch better. And then use customer feedback, you still know what to do at the end of the day.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And that's a question to everybody. Are you building what the customer needs per time? You might have built what they need now, but tomorrow, is this still what they need? So that's why customer feedback is very essential. And then you also mentioned that you can build a good product, right? But then maybe launching it was not done properly. What tips would you give to founders? They built, let's say, a minimum viable product, awesome, great, and all that. What tips will you give them on a proper and a successful launch of their product?
Okay, so I'll give example based on product management industry. So there's something we call pre-launch activities or pre-launch ceremonies. We have launch ceremonies and we have post-launch ceremonies. So how to get it right is, so you need to start from the basics. So during pre-launch, it means maybe you're already in the beta testing phase, or you're already testing your product. It's almost at the launch phase, but you're just checking for bugs. So during that pre-launch phase, it's important to start doing a lot of market awareness. So these people that you are building this product for, remember you have already done your survey and you have asked the users, or you have conducted your survey and they've told you that this is the problem that they have and this is what they need to solve it. So now it's like trying to remind the customers that, okay, oh, this product that you said you need, oh, yeah, we are ready, or we are about to launch, or now get ready to come and try this product. So that's what the pre-launch process or ceremony is really all about. There are many ways to leverage on this. Social media, most times people will go through the traditional method of printing flyers. And of course, that's why most times you might be stuck in traffic and you are seeing billboards with a lot of, most billboards advertising products that are not even launched yet. So this is just market awareness is the major thing to leverage on during the pre-launch phase to keep people reminded that, okay, there's a product that we are expecting. Then during the launch phase, this is when your product is already in the stores. People can readily go to the Apple Store or Play Store and download this product. I'm talking about, for example, if these products are digital products like soft mobile applications, or probably their web apps or their websites, whatever it is. So now during the launch phase, yeah, there's already a product out there that people can actually see. It's different from the pre-launch when you just talk. So now you have results to show. So the best way, like, to actually leverage on the launch ceremony is to keep people talking. So it's one thing for people to expect your product to be launched, and then the moment you launch, then okay, now that the product is here, let's hear what. But no, it's very important to keep being in their faces. And then probably you can get some SF. There are so many things that people are doing. There are some things I see on social media, and I'm really wild because I know a lot of apps that I don't really use every day. But most times when I just stumble on maybe Instagram or LinkedIn and I see one video of how to use the app, or how to look for a particular feature, or how to buy something on this website, it will take me back to that app that I forgot already existed. But this is an app that was already at the back of my mind when they were still about to launch. So there are so many ways to do this, and this is where the marketing team actually comes in. So founders should work with, you don't need to have a full marketing team, but maybe one market person that really knows how to make sure that users are seeing this product everywhere. In fact, not everywhere, of course, they should not see it in their dreams, you understand. But then everywhere everywhere they look, it should be something that people are talking about constantly. So because it's assumed that you built a product that is solving a problem. So if that product is solving a problem, then users actually need this problem to be solved. Depends, is it every day? Is it every week? Is it every month? You have to leverage on that to ensure that there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of buzz that is going on, so that people can keep downloading that product, keep trying it, and then you get customer feedback. Then lastly, the post-launch stage, that's the customer, the iteration and then gathering of feedback comes in. So like I mentioned before, make sure you gather a lot of customer feedback. So the best way to actually leverage on the post-launch ceremony is, now that your product is out there, people are talking about it. So now what are they talking about the product? It's one thing for people to talk. You need to know what they are saying. Is it positive? Is it negative? Gather all those feedback together. So for every time that there's a positive feedback, it means you're doing something right. If there's negative feedback, it means something is wrong somewhere. You have to pinpoint what exactly is bringing about this. Is it that maybe the way we built the product, or is it that some features are not working fine, or is it bugs, or is it maybe the way we integrated the product? I mean, it could be anything. It could even be that the product, it's not about the product, but maybe the way you have marketing, you're sending a wrong message about the product. But it's just to figure out, why are we getting negative ratings, if at all there are, because most times there will be. For the first time you're launching a product, every single person will not like your product. You're not selling ice cream. You understand? But then the moment you actually leverage on that negative feedback, then use it to come up with new, probably now that you've gotten the negative feedback, iterate on it and find out how can you change those negative feedback to positive. So if it's a feature that is not working fine, of course, it means you need to update that feature, and then you're going to relaunch the app. So back to back. So these are 3 different stages. And of course, another thing I failed to mention during the post-launch stages, while you're gathering feedback, it's important as a founder to prioritize that it's not every feedback that you're going to leverage on. Because if you're building your product to fit in to the wants or the needs of every single user, then you're going to be confused. So it's very important to prioritize per time the ones that are important. Okay, these are the ones we are going to work on now because it's important. But these are the ones that are not so important. They will be fine. So these are important product and business decisions. Founders have to also leverage on this to ensure that they are building the right thing per time. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I'm sure our founders have been an amazing time, and I hope they are taking notes of this valuable information that is being put out there. From my side, I'll just ask this before I open the floor for questions. You touched briefly on the team. So what are the best practices for actually managing a team as a small startup? Right, because you talked about at least having one person who has like a marketing expertise in your team, and in other places we know how human beings can be sometimes, and trying to manage people can be quite difficult. So what practical tips can you give founders of small startups who have a small team but don't know how to manage a team effectively?
Okay, so the first thing is, it's very important that if you have a team, whether it's a small team, a big team, or even one person, 2 people actually can make a team. So the most important thing is that ensure that there is clear communication. So ensure that both you and your team understand the goals. So what goals? It could be the product goals. It could be what exactly you are building. When you understand what you are building, then you should know the goals. What are you targeting? What are the things you are looking for in the nearest future? So of course, you should have all those things properly documented and then properly communicated. So everybody in the team has to understand why we are building this product. So when there's clear communication, it's very important. That's one way of managing your team. Secondly, like I mentioned, agile. I will always scream agile because most people follow this waterfall method of when we say this is how we are going to build, we must build this way. So during product development, it never works like that. It has never worked like that because along the line, so many things are going to come up based on research. So it's very important to ensure to keep at the back of your mind that there's no one way of doing things. There's no one way of building this product. So of course, if you're managing a team, you have to recognize that since you know that there's no one way of doing things, you cannot enforce a particular method because during that research phase, many things could come up. So you have to keep your mind open, keep your options open. Very important. Then thirdly, regular check-ins. So this team that is building, you have to your development or your product team, you have to keep checking up on them per time, understand what their strengths, understand what issues they have during that building process, and then know how you can review it. And then from time to time, review what is being built to ensure that we are meeting up with the goal. And that thing again is that you have to trust your team. So many founders micromanage, and then they will say they don't micromanage, but honestly they do. So you have to ensure that that's why I said communicate the goals or communicate the vision to everybody in the team and just trust them to run with it. Of course, you're not trusting them that you're not going to keep following up per time. You keep following up, you keep watching over them, you keep monitoring what they are building, but you have to trust that they know what they are doing. So you don't keep asking for updates every 2 seconds. What are you doing? What are you doing? It can actually help them make your team members or your development team to not be focused. Then another thing again is focusing on what is important per time, focusing on priorities. So you have to help the team as the founder or the product owner. Yeah, most times the founder is the product owner. You have to help the team to be focused on what is important per time. And how do you do that? Prioritizing, because during this process, you'll find out that there's a lot of things to do at once. So you have to help the team. Maybe, of course, it might be the work of the product manager or the product owner can be the one to handle that. Prioritize on what is important per time and explain to them why it's important. It's one thing for you to tell your team members to do something. It's one thing for you to explain to them why they need to do it. So that way, the attitude is different. If they understand why they are prioritizing things per time, then you have to provide them with resources, of course, to build whatever they need to build, the tools they need, the necessary access and supports that they need. You have to provide them with that, and then keep a room open for collaboration, of course foster collaboration amongst all of them. So encourage them to collaborate with one another. The fact that it's not a competition, because when you encourage competition in a team, you're dividing the team. So encourage collaboration. Everybody should be open to sharing ideas. If you have issues, you can reach out to your team member, and then it's not a crime. It doesn't mean you're going to deduct their salary if they reach out to their team member. It's not a crime to ask questions. And then lastly, reward every success. So it's very important to celebrate when you guys have crossed important milestones or achievements, and then reward it. Maybe once in a while you guys come together to just talk about where you started from, how far you've gotten, and what it has taken to get to that point, and then reward them even if it's the littlest of things. These things can be really appreciated actually. So yeah, founders can leverage on these practices to manage their product team, especially in a startup setting.
Thank you so much, Uchechi. It's been an amazing session, and I'm sure that we've learned quite a lot. Now, please, if you have any question, you can signify by raising your hands or you type it in the chat box. Now is your time to ask your questions. I'm sure you've learned one or two things from this session, and I want to clarify some other things. So if you have further questions, please. Ila, did anybody send a question to you?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, my question goes here like this. Could you share any tips on leveraging data analysis to improve product development decision making?
Sorry, can you take your question again? Could I share what?
All right, could you share any tips on leveraging data analysis to improve product development decision making?
Okay, so data analysis in product development decision making. If I understand that correctly, it's more like asking the role of data analysis during the product development process. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, this is all based on when you're doing your research work. Yeah, depends on whatever means you're using to gather these insights from users. So most times, of course, we are talking about startups, right? Today we are focusing on startup, not big companies that already have products in the market that is doing very well. So for startups, it's assumed that most times they are still doing building their product, or they just released the product, or they just have a product out there that is still doing very well, and they're still trying to like leverage on getting more customers or getting more users. So yes, so the role of data analysis actually. So me, I'm not a data analyst, but I have gotten to work with data analysts before, and I understand that it's important to understand customer behavior, and then of course you need to run the numbers. You need to know probably, so it all depends. It all depends. What do you want? What data? What do you want to use the data for? Do you want to use it to maybe gather some insight as to the number of people that are interacting with your products per time? Or do you want to use the data to know how the number of people that are interacting with a particular feature? So during the product development process, you can use data for so many things and then for so many reasons. So the importance of data analysis is also it helps you to cut through the work of, like I mentioned, traditional method of going to ask users a lot of questions. And most times that can come off as intruding. As a user, I don't want anybody to stop me on the road and start asking me questions. Or so most times, yeah, of course, founders or one of the ways of gathering feedback is maybe sending them Google Forms and the rest. But most times when you have this data, I know data analysts know how they do their thing, analyzing data based on what we already have in the internet. They know how they do it. So it's very important to leverage on these practices or this process to gather a lot of insight as to what exactly you want to track per time during the product development process. So if it's based on users, then you can use data analysis to probably understand user behavior, how they're interacting with your product, how they're interacting with different features in your product, and if they're not interacting with it, to understand why. And then based on the data you get, also you also understand what you can do or what can you leverage, what information or what feedback, what can you learn from the user journey or the customer journey based on the analysis that you have done. How can you leverage on this feedback to iterate on your product to probably bring out something better, maybe based on feedback. And this is mostly if the feedback is negative, to iterate on your product and then make sure that you're building something that users will need per time. So yes, I would say that data analysis is one aspect of product development that actually helps with decision making, and it's very important for founders to leverage on this during the product development process. So it all boils down to why do you need this? What exactly do you need analysis for, based on the different aspects of product development? And then when you identify what exactly is needed for, you can know how to go about it. So for me, I think here I just gave you like more insight as to maybe during the research phase and during the development phase and during when you're gathering insights from customers, when you're gathering customer feedback. So data analysis actually helps you to understand all these things and then help you to iterate on your product so that you can keep building per time what is important to the user, so that your product does not experience a lot of churn rates, and at the end of the day then decline in terms of the number of users that you have on your product. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think we have some questions on the chat box. Someone said, assuming after the first MVP and market analysis, you have a product to launch first week of August, and it's already July ending, and you only have 2 out of 4 key features ready. Do you push the team to meet up the other 2 key features or push the launch date back, assuming all 4 features were key feedbacks from customers?
Okay. So firstly, you have already identified that the 4 features are key features based on feedback from your customers. So it means that you need to have all 4 over 4. And then it's already July ending and you have just 2 checked. And you need to release this MVP 1st of August. So the first most, should I say the most reasonable thing to do is actually, because if you identify that, and identifying means you have prioritized maybe other features or other feedback, and you have identified that these are the 4 that are the core concerns. The first thing I'll ask to do is, amongst the 4, even if you say the 4 of them are the core feedback, all of them cannot have the same rating. So it's very important to like do a rating. There are so many prioritization techniques that can be used. You can use an effort value map, or there's so many that we product managers actually use, or you can use the RICE method to just probably give a score as to out of these 4, do we need 4 of them launched at once, or can we go ahead with the 2 out of the 4? So based on that, you can now know if at the end of that you find out that the 4 of them must go out at once, then ultimately you have to push your launch day forward. You have to push it forward so that you can ensure that you have this 4, all of them checked. But most times you will check it and you see that you can actually launch with just 2, or you can launch with 3. Maybe you can try to launch with 3, and then maybe 1 or 2 weeks after launch, you just update your product and you can add the remaining 1. So it all depends on prioritization. You have to prioritize and know which of them is the most important. So I'm going to assume that based on the question you asked, all 4 are important. So yes, that's just the best thing to do. If all 4 are important, then you have to push your launch time forward.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers your question. Someone asked, what are some proactive approaches to identify and mitigate risk in the early stages of product development?
Sorry, can you come again?
What are some proactive approaches to identify and mitigate risk in the early stages of product development?
Okay, so while I don't really understand that question, mitigating risks in the early stages is like trying to figure out what exactly are the things that are going to stop your product from launching. I don't know if that's what the person meant. So trying to figure out or trying to identify what these blockers would be during the early stages, right? So yes, the first thing to do, if that's what the person means by mitigating risks during the early stages of product development. So the first thing is, that's why I always tell people, personally, all the products I've built, I am very heavy on documentation. You have to document it down. What exactly are we building? We have discovered what we are building, why we are building, who we are building for. How long do we have to build? When all these things have actually been well documented and communicated with the development team. So when I say development team, I mean the team that is actually going to build. Most times it's not, yes, of course, the stakeholders will be aware before you even start the project. So you have to be in sync with the stakeholders. But now the development team have to be aware of all this. And then this is the timeline we are working with. This is what we are building. So the first way to mitigate risk is document everything that you are building down. Document it. After documenting what you are building, explain to the team why this is why are we going ahead with this idea. Of course, they will have an insight as to the customer feedback that was done. So they don't just maybe get on board and they don't even understand why we are building this in the first place. That's communicating the vision to them. When everybody is in sync and everybody is in check based on the constant communication of the product goals and the vision, then there needs to be timeline. Like, in fact, the most important thing to do to mitigate, like ensuring that you actually build based on them, build and then release your product on time, build according to the timeline, according to the budget, is ensure that there are proper roadmaps and timelines. And what are roadmaps and timelines? It's more like, now that you already know what you're building, break it down into features or break it down into scopes. Then break down all these scopes into timeline. Like, so most times for we product managers, we break it into quarters. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. That's the 4 quarters of the year. So by the end of Q1, what should we have done based on all the things I've broken down? So before you even start building the product, you should have a roadmap and timeline. I know at the back of your mind, the next question you ask is, how can you tell that by the end of this time, you will truly be done with this? That's why it's very important to break it. When you know what you're building, estimate a timing for it. And also give, of course, when you're estimating a time, you're going to give like time for extra, maybe for extra time. Maybe because if you give 2 weeks, for example, for a particular thing, and at the end of that 2 weeks, the thing your development team is building, maybe then you require more time based on it. Most times it might not even be as a result of maybe a fault of your own. It might be based on integration of third-party APIs or whatever thing. So you just have to ensure that you're giving extra time. That's one thing that's very important. Most product managers don't do that. Ensure that you are giving extra time. And then when you have already broken down all these things into roadmaps and timelines, then communicate. It's very important to communicate. Communicate again with the product team and development team and ensure that everybody is in check. Then, of course, you can go ahead to build. So now, the difference between when you started and when you start building is that everybody is aware of what we are doing, why we are doing it, how long we have to do it, and then the most important things that we need to focus on, and you're prioritizing my time. So these are the most important ways to mitigate risk during the early processes of product development. So during the product development process, there will also be other risks that will come up. But based on your question, during the early processes, these are the most important things to look out for.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think one more question in the chat box. What are some effective ways to reduce product development time without sacrificing quality?
Okay, some effective ways to reduce product development time without sacrificing quality is, yes, firstly, I think I already even answered this question in my previous answer. Firstly is outlining what exactly you're building and how long it's going to take to build it. So now, when you say reducing product development time, I'm going to use a practical instance to answer this question. So if you're building a product and then let's say the building time is 6 months, and then you want to reduce the time to 5 months without compromising on the quality. The first question as a founder that you need to ask is, one, am I the one building the product? This is a very tough question that founders don't like to answer. But first of all, you have to ask, am I the one building the product? The answer is most likely no. Yeah. So now that the time that has been estimated for the product building process is 6 months, you have to identify what exactly is the reason why I want to reduce the timeline. If it's so that the product gets out to the users quickly, or maybe it might be that it's a budget constraint. You don't have enough money, or you don't have enough utilities or resources to keep up with the project for 6 months. But maybe you can do 4 months, you can do 5 months. So the first thing to do is understand why the time was broken down into 6 months. This is me giving an example. You have to understand the why. Most times you have to understand why exactly this was broken down into 6 months. So most times it might be that, oh, we're just giving extra time for the developers. Maybe this can actually be done in 4 months. But when you understand why the timeline was given as 6 months, then you can know if you want to still cut back on the timeline, even after knowing that this is the particular time it's going to take to build that product without compromising on quality. But if you actually speak to maybe your development team and then communicate the vision to them, explain to them, if this is the budget we have at hand and we need to get this product shipped out as soon as possible, you might most times be lucky to find out that, yeah, you can actually reduce the timeline to maybe 4 months. So the most effective way to do that is understand why that timeline was given first, then communicate with your product team, communicate with the development team, and explain to them what is at stake and what is at hand. And then those are the two important ways to probably it might not work most times, yeah, because if a product actually needs 6 months to be fully built and then tested and released into the market, and you're trying to cut down the timing, then you might have to compromise on the quality. But some other times it might actually work as long as you communicate with the developers and ensure that, or not, let me not use developers, you're communicating with the people that are building, because it's not just developers, the whole product team, communicating with them and seeing how we can cut down extra time that is not actually needed. Then, so those are the most important or effective ways to reduce product development time without sacrificing or compromising on the quality of the product that is being built.
Thank you so much, Azan. I hope your question was answered. Okay, there is one more, although I think you addressed this earlier, but I'm just going to read it out. What role does customer feedback play in refining product development tactics? What role does customer feedback play in refining product development tactics?
Okay. So customer feedback is, I think customer feedback answers one very important question for founders and development teams. Did we get the product right? So based on the feedback you get from your customers, you will know whether the answer is yes or no. So what role does customer feedback play actually in refining this product development tactics? So when you say refining, it means you actually have your own way, or you already have a way that's already set as to why the way you wanted to develop the product in the first place. So one thing customer feedback can do for you is to understand, or probably to answer the question of, should we go ahead with the way we already have? So we already outlined why we are building the product, how we are going to build it, how long it's going to take. And then you get feedback from customers. It can actually change the whole trajectory of everything you have. So you might actually discover that, oh, this is not, if we go along this route that we are already planning to go through, then we will not build a product that's going to solve the problem, or there's going to be a solution to the problem that the user already has. So the most important thing that customer feedback does is to help you answer the question of, are we going to build this thing right? Are users going to use these products? That's the most important thing. So bearing in mind that most times if the answer is no, that means you're not building it right. You might have to go back and then re-strategize from the beginning again, do more research work and start afresh. But it's even very important to get that feedback before you start building, so that you don't already build and then launch and then you discover that, oh, you did not get customer feedback, or you did not do your survey right, you did not do your market analysis right, so you built the wrong thing, and that's a waste of effort, based on waste of resources, based on waste of the time and energy of the personnel that builds the product. So yeah, that's the most important factor or role that customer feedback plays during product development process.
Thank you so much for that. It's been an amazing time. Are there other questions? Does anybody else have any question? I think I've gone through everything in the chat box. Does anyone want to unmute their mic before we round off the session? Are there any other questions? Okay. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you so much, Uchechi, for your time. We really appreciate you coming. It's been an insightful as well as engaging session. And this will not be the last time I'll be interacting with you. We'll still reach out because you're very valuable to us, and especially our venture studio. We have a venture studio at Pen Promise Ventures where we utilize cross-functional hands-on expertise to take ideas from concepts through to company. That's the whole, just as you mentioned, the idea validation stage to the product launch stage. And we help co-build businesses and providing services as well as funds for underserved founders. Currently, we even have an application that is opened, targeted at founders at the product building stage. Last year, we had an 8 weeks workshop targeted at idea validation stage. But this year, our goal is to focus on founders who have validated their ideas but are building their products. So our applications are currently on. If you go to our social media handles, you'll see it there. You see the link and all that there. Thank you, and we hope that when we call on you soon, you would also be warm enough to accept our invitation, especially our venture studio. Did you hear the part of the venture studio?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much to the Pen Promise Ventures. This was really an amazing one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ila, over to you.
Specific, this is where we're going to put out this particular recording. And of course, subsequent sessions that we're going to have at Pen Promise Ventures, we'll make sure that we upload them there. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and of course the rest of the social media platforms and accounts, and we'll stay updated with you. And last but not the least, I would want each and every one of you here to put on your microphone, to put on your camera so that we'll have a thumbnail for social media. Please, if you can hear me, put on your camera so that we'll take a screenshot for socials. All right, thank you very much. And there we go. All right. So with that said and done, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining this wonderful session. Uchechi, I can't thank you enough for the insightful information you were with our respective founders. I would like to wish every single one of you farewell and hope to see you soon.